Good morning. It is 9:30. It is Tuesday, and we're in Bangkok. That means that we're at the IPPM session. And it's cold. This is an IETF meeting, so you should familiarize yourself with the note well. It governs a lot of the processes that we operate under, in particular, anything that relates to IPR and such. There's also information about code of conduct, anti-harassment, etc. Please be familiar with this if you're participating in the IETF. It is very important that we treat each other with respect and that we have a good working environment. So please take note to this as well. We want to foster a good and collaborative spirit here at the IETF. If you've had any problems, there are several groups that you can reach out to discuss that. IETF meetings are hybrid meetings. That means that you can join them on site or you can join them remotely. There are several tools that you can make use of to join. If you're in the room, please make sure that you either use your laptop and join, or use your handheld device, joining using one of the QR codes that you can find here. And please then familiarize yourself with how to use the tool. So if you're joining remotely, make sure that your audio and video are off unless you are presenting during a session. It is also strongly recommended to use a headset so that there will be less echo issues when you're actually talking. We do have a note taker, which is Thomas here, but that's the first day as a chair. You get to take the notes. No, but it would be great if somebody in the room could also be a backup note taker. If there are discussions where Thomas is participating, etc. So you have the link here to the notes. You can also find the notes in the Meet Echo tool itself, or through the agenda page in the data tracker. As usual, we have a pretty packed agenda, and as usual, we will start with working group documents. So we have a number of documents that are ongoing. You see them here. So that will be the first part of our agenda. After that, we will continue with what we call the proposed work section. That is consisting of documents that have had some level of discussion fairly recently on the mailing list. So there are a number of presentations here. And then finally, after we have gone through these, we will go to the lightning talks, where we have presentations of new work or work that hasn't seen any significant discussion on the mailing list in any recent time. And we have 3 presentations here. These lightning talks are intended to be pretty fast, mostly to kind of raise awareness and attention to some topic that you want to have more discussion on. So try to focus on a single slide and really pitching your idea to solicit feedback. And before we move forward, do we have any bashing of the agenda? Right, seems not. Then we move forward. We have an organizational update to IPPM. And Tommy here will be stepping down as IPPM chair after this meeting. And Thomas here has joined us and he's been on for like a month or so, I guess. So I would like to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to you, Tommy. It has been an absolute privilege to co-chair this with you. This was my first chairing position, and I couldn't have asked for like a better co-chair to get started with. And it's been, yeah, really, really great, true privilege. And yeah. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, thank you, Marcus, and thank you to the whole group. I mean, IPPM was also the first group that I chaired, and it's been really wonderful getting to learn about all the different things that get worked on here. I think it's very diverse and very important work that gets done here, and I'm excited to continue to watch it go on and be able to support things from the other side of this desk.
We're looking forward to that. And also want to say a big welcome to Thomas and a big thank you for taking on this role to co-chair IPPM going forward.
Thanks a lot.
All right, then we move forward in our agenda. A few document updates since IETF 121. So we have concluded 2 working group last calls. One is for the capacity protocol, and we will see next slide for a bit of a status update on that one. We've also concluded a working group last call for hybrid 2-step, and there's a Shepherd write-up underway for that one. And we've also adopted the Altmark Yang document since last time. And since Rudiger could not be here, he asked us to relay a bit of an update on the capacity protocol. So like we just said, it has gone through working group last call, and our incoming AD has done extensive review with a lot of comments, and Rudiger is saying these around halfway through clearing these comments. So there was a new draft being published, but it's not final. There are more changes to come, more comments to clear. And he also says that most of the comments are kind of minors, editorials, and nits, but there are lots of them, so it will take a few weeks. And then there are some technical updates to the document as well. There's an introduction of an optional UDP checksum that is intended for environments where UDP data integrity may be uncertain. There is also some security-related text that has been removed. So it doesn't specify or discuss features applied by the test protocol for one-way IP capacity measurement. For instance, section optional fully encrypted mode for information only. So that has been removed. So we're looking forward to new updates moving forward with this one. And that brings us to the end of this section, and we will move on to the working group documents. And we will start off with, which is our first one? Integrity protection. Do you want a clicker?
Yeah, sure.
Do we need? Okay, thanks. Do we need the slides clicker? Pass slides. Yes. Okay. You should have control now. Yeah, that works. Perfect.
Good morning, everyone. So yeah, this is an update again on IOM integrity. I know most of you like it, especially Tommy. This draft has been around for a long time now, and it's back from last call, as a working group document, mainly because I failed, to provide a revision in time. So sorry about that. But the good news is that we got a plan. We got a plan to address, the review from the Security Directorate. So we got 2 main issues that are still here. The first one is just, the fact that we reuse the nonce on transit nodes, and since we are using GMAC, you cannot use, the same key with the same nonce 2 times. So basically, we just need here some more text, to clarify that. So just, some text to cover the security aspect in that case. And Ben already proposed some text as well, so should be easy to address. The touchy point is more about, the fact that we include some header fields in the integrity protection. And in that case, there is a problem with interoperability. So this is something we had like in the first version, same problem over and over versions. And we tried, to find a trade-off solution, but it looks like it's not, the right one yet. So right now we have, in the draft, we define the header fields that are to be included in the integrity protection for each option type. But as soon as it's specified, it doesn't change anymore. So it's fixed. So should someone add a new field with a new RFC in an option type, it would be excluded. Even if it would make sense, you know, to include it, you cannot. So it's maybe too extreme. There is the opposite solution that we could go for, is to have versioning. So it's kind of the perfect solution, but maybe too perfect, especially considering that IOM option types do not have versioning. So I don't think it would make sense, you know, to have versioning on top of something that doesn't have versioning. So, you know, we could discuss that. So what we propose is, again, a trade-off solution, because this draft is all about trade-off solutions. We could define header fields, and we wouldn't freeze, you know, that list. So basically it would be an INR registry that we would define. And when new fields arrive, you would just, you know, update the registry. So you would tell me, well, there is no interrupt right here. In fact, we could assume that if I am a vendor, you know, the integrity protection is like a feature running on top of IOM. So basically, if I am up to date with the RFC, you know, probably the integrity protection is just, you know, based on that version. So if you consider that a vendor A and vendor B are not, one of them is not RFC compliant, there is no interoperability on the IOM point of view. So basically, no IOM integrity either. But if both are RFC compliant and they have the integrity protection, it's highly likely that, you know, they are compliant, and so the IOM integrity protection is also compliant in between. So if we take this assumption into account, I think this trade-off solution could work. Basically, you have the registry and you would update it, and as soon as the vendor, you know, is back as a RFC compliant implementation, it would be fine. So I think, yeah, I think this is all for me. Have a discussion with the working group and the chairs about that to get, you know, the feeling.
Do we have any opinions from the floor on this?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that in the draft, we reduce, you know, the probability for a field to be, a header field to be included in the integrity protection. We reduce it by the fact that we define that a field is included if it provides meaning or context to IOM data. So basically, if it's just a field needed for processing the header, it doesn't have to be included. So you could just add a new field in the header. Depending on its definition, it may not be included as well. So, yeah. So if silence means let's go for the trade-off solution, I don't know.
Very clear.
Hi, Greg Nursky. So their proposal is to protect pre-allocated and incremental.
Say it again.
The proposal is to give integrity protection to incremental and pre-allocated.
Correct, as well as edge to edge and POT for that matter. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's not standardized, so probably it's a mute point. But it would not affect direct export.
No, it has been excluded from the draft for several reasons we mentioned in previous meetings. Yeah.
So edge to edge and pre-allocated, I think that I can guesstimate how it looks, how it might affect incremental, because in incremental, as we understand, so each node adds a data. So basically, that would have to affect.
Actually, it's exactly the same process as with the PTO, because you just, cover part of the header on the NCAP, and then the transit nodes that would add their data would just, add that integrity protection to the chain. And so it's just, at the end, it's like if you have, the entire pre-allocated trace. So both are the same. That's the same algorithm running inside now.
Okay. Yeah. So probably,
Edge to edge is pretty simple in that case, because
Yes.
only the NCAP is.
Yeah, edge to edge. I think that's simple.
There is no transit nodes in that case. Oh, yeah.
Actually, frankly, I care more about DEX, so if it's excluded, I'm impartial.
Yeah, I mean, the big reason why we excluded DEX was because if we want to protect IOM data, but DEX is not inserting data in packets, so it wouldn't make sense. And we are not protecting the processing; we're protecting the data. So that's why it was excluded.
Right. Yes. Basically, protecting DEX data it's orthogonal to IOM.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And it seems like we hear at least we hear no opposition to your proposed trade-off solution. It looks like a reasonable way forward. I think it is the right approach, and of course we will solicit feedback on the mailing list.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like a plan. Right. Thank you.
I have to take back slide control. Yes.
There's only a few slides. It's a clicker or?
It's a clicker, yes, and we can give you control. Now
Okay.
you should. Now
Okay.
you should have control. Yeah.
Okay. So hello. This is an update on our work on asymmetric packet extension for STAMP protocol. So what we been busy. It's thanks to Rudiger for his comments, and we had a great discussion that helped us to clarify several aspects of the draft, and then just upon looking at it, found some nits, so we fixed it just yesterday or day before yesterday. Okay, so as said, so the asymmetrical is intended to do several things. One of them is rate measurements, where is seen as a beneficial for testing to create a condition when a single stamp test packet generated by session sender triggers a number of reflected text packet. So what we give in this extension opportunity to define the number of packets that will be generated by session reflector, as well as the size of these packets and interval between these packets. Also, part of this extension is the ability for the multicast environment to control the leaves that will be responding to the stamp test packet. So either it will be filtered based on layer 2 information or layer 3 information. So thus, the operator will get an opportunity to control the volume of packets being reflected, so not to overwhelm the sender. Actually, that was one of the concerns expressed by Rudiger. So what we have changed, we clarified that session sender is expected to be root of their distribution tree. And we added example using the test packets control how it can be combined with the class of service TLV, which might be useful in some environments, for example, in mobile networks delivering multi-service, often there's changes in class of service marking to give their higher priority to services like LTE and 5G comparing to, if they still delivering 2G and 3G. And we extended security considerations for case when the reflected packet control is used in multicast environment. So I think that example that Rudiger provided us and we included in this update in the security consideration is quite interesting and relevant. So what it suggests is that as a part of procedure, and it's some thought not only for operators, probably for implementers as well, part of this test could be is that when the first packet requests response of only single packet, so that the system, the agent, stamp agent on the session sender can receive an estimate of what would be the volume. So how many leaves will respond? Because not necessarily root is aware of number of active leaves that are part of this multicast distribution tree. So by this simple procedure, that can be really discovered and reported to operator, and whether to go further with the full-scale test where their number of packets generated in response to control the reflected packet will increase n-fold. So whereas n is a number of requested test packets. So so that's already being covered, basically what this extension is. And we always welcome your questions, comments, and we believe that this document is ready for a working group last call.
Thank you, Greg. Do we have any comments? All clear. We will note that you're ready for working group last call, and we'll take that into consideration. As usual, we would like to see more feedback and more engagement around the document. Sometimes issuing a working group last call is a venue to solicit feedback, but yeah, we'll take it into consideration, and we will send you a request to please engage and look at the document to help us prepare for progressing it.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Rakesh with stamp extension letters. I have to take back control first. And then
I'm remote. Good morning, everyone.
Do you want us to drive the slides, or do you want to?
Yeah, if you can drive.
Sure.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Rakesh Gandhi, and I'm giving an update on the stamp extensions for reflecting the stamp packet headers on behalf of the co-authors listed. Next slide, please. So agenda is that we'll have a quick look at the requirements and the next steps. And next slide, please. So requirements is the stamp extensions for reflecting the packet headers, basically for hop-by-hop and edge-to-edge measurements, as well as for two-way and one-way measurements. So goal is to avoid IPv6 and MPLS protocol extensions, especially the midpoint nodes, because they are already agnostic to stamp protocol. The scope is stamp, but the highlighted part is IPv6 data plane and MPLS data plane, and that's what the next slide is about, to have get some feedback. So next slide, please. So there is no update that's posted. There are a couple of comments received, but we have not posted the draft yet. So thanks for everyone for reviewing and giving comments, Footer and Giuseppe. So the question is, the draft covers both IPv6 and MPLS data planes. There is some uncertainty in MPLS working group around MPLS network action. For example, for carrying IOAM and post-tech data. So they could go experimental way. There is lots of debates and discussions going on. So the question was that to unblock progressing of this draft, I mean, we have a couple of options. One is to status quo for sure, but we could move MPLS data plane extension to a separate working group draft. This way, IPv6 is not blocked on it, or we remove it until the MPLS working group has a like there's an RFC for M&A and it's decided and stable, and then we come back with an individual draft and progress that way, or any other suggestions that we can get from working group on this. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. So any feedback on MPLS data plane options? Other than that, we'll post with a couple of comments that were received sometime this week. It is ready for working group last call. That there are no other pending comments, and welcome your further review and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakesh. Do we have any comments or opinions? Greg.
Hi, Greg Mirsky Erickson. Regarding the status of MPLS work, I think that, well, maybe I'm overly optimistic, but I think that they're pretty safe to keep the MPLS as a part of this document, because MPLS working group will settle, and it's more likely it will settle on a standard track. So the only it will be probably dependency if some documents that are being in the work by MPLS working group will be progressing, and if they are the normative reference that I think that they should be a normative reference, then it will be misref. So if the intention of the group to progress at least some part of this work, IPv6 related, earlier, then probably splitting might be a reasonable option, so that to publish document earlier for IPv6, and then get the maturity of MPLS M&A solution.
Yeah, that's exactly is the thing. So thanks, Greg, for elaborating, and that's the feedback that we like to have. MPLS can take a little bit longer than we would expect. So yeah, it would be stuck in some misrep state for a long time.
Right. So then whether you're ready for working group last call maybe depends on how you want to resolve it. You can keep discussing that then and take that into consideration.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Björn.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Björn. I'm from Domos, and I'll be talking about quality outcome.
Now you said.
Right. First, a quick agenda. I'll do a brief refresh on quality outcome, recap the work that we've done so far, talk a little bit about the work done since Dublin, and then briefly also what the next steps and sort of what's still missing is. So first up, quality outcome. The idea is to have a way of talking and expressing network quality that is useful for vendors and operators, apps and end users. So for the apps, there needs to be a way to express what they need from the network. And then that also feeds into the end user facing metric, because end users consume applications, they don't consume networks. So it's more useful for them, in our opinion, to know which apps will work well than sort of their throughput number or their latency number, things like that. So that sort of making that possible is what we're aiming for here. And then for the vendors or operators, it's important that if you um, make a measurement and find out that gaming will not work well on this network, for instance, then it needs to be possible to figure out why. And yeah, very briefly, this is what the solutions are, we think. But I'll skip that in the interest of time. So going into Dublin, what we've done so far is sort of we started with two initial drafts. And based on feedback from this group, we merged those to a single document. Then we added the loss to the computation of quality of outcome as well. And then before Dublin, we had a Comcast, an end user trial sponsored by the Comcast Innovation Fund. And we got some very positive feedback from end users. Basically, I would say very strong indications that the metric is a good proxy for their subjective reported experience. Okay, and so since Dublin, what we've done is to run a simulation study of quality of outcome in some specific network scenarios. This is open source. It's on GitHub. You will find the code for running the simulation, the report written about the work, and all of the data that is the basis for the plots in the report. I hope if anyone wants to do their own versions of this, that it's well documented enough. But if not, just give me a shout. I'll be happy to help. And so the goal of this simulation study was basically to provide a reference as a sort of best engineering practices for designing a system around quality of outcome, because there are a bunch of decisions that need to be made, like when you're measuring, so the score is based on latency distributions, right? We're used to thinking about latency as a number or maybe a few numbers, like the P99 or something like that. In the quality attenuation work that we're building this on, latency is expressed as a distribution. So think of it as all of the samples that you've taken over some interval. You use those to represent the distribution of latency for the link. And so going into making those distributions, you need to decide on like how often do you measure. You have constraints on the accuracy of those measurements. And then for the computation of the score as well, you need the application requirements, and those need to be decided. So there's a decision there as well. And then number of samples is sort of tied to the sampling rate and the interval that you choose to look at this over. So we simulated a bunch of different parameters to see how it affects the quality of outcome scores. And what we've found is basically a version of this general property of fat tail distributions, which is that small samples tend to underestimate the tail. So what this plot shows is basically on the left side, you have a fat tail distribution, and on the right side, you have estimates of the 99th percentile of that distribution for different sample sizes. So 10, 100, and 1,000 samples. And what we can see is that if you have very few samples, your estimates tend to be lower than the true 99th percentile. Sometimes they're way over, and on average, they are correct. But most of the time, they're underestimating it, which means that because for quality outcome, we care about the outliers of latency. And so what will happen if you have not enough samples is your estimate of the outliers of latency will be lower than the true value, which means your quality outcome score will be better. So you tend to overestimate the quality of the network, basically. And so, yeah, there's a lot of data in this slide, but it's basically showing the same thing as the previous one. So on the left side, we have a bunch of different simulations of a Wi-Fi link. These are just different random seeds with the same parameters. And then on the right side, we have the quality of outcome score as a function of the sampling rate. So this 0.05 hertz on the left side here is one sample every 20 seconds. On the right side, we have 100 hertz, or one sample every 10 milliseconds. And then there's a gradient. As we can see, if you sample very often, your estimate of, or your quality of outcome score is very close to what it would be if you had perfect information, which is the green horizontal line, and is very reliably very close to that. But if you sample less often, your estimate has much more variance in it. It's kind of obvious, but the point here is to have a reference data set and a way to generate those, so that when you're making these decisions, designing a system, you can find information somewhere about like what are decent choices for these values. All right. Finally, I think one thing that is still missing is to test this quality of outcome score in collaboration with applications to measure like the and correlate those with the network-based scores. So I want to sort of invite everyone here, if you represent an application or a browser or something like that and want to do some work to collaborate on this, I would be very happy to work with you. Or if you don't represent an app but want to, but know someone who might be interested, please, if you could introduce us or me to some people who might be able and interested to do this work, that would be very much appreciated. And with that, thank you for your attention. And we'd also like to propose a working group last call for this draft, because even though we haven't done the application side of this yet, I think it's still sort of mature enough and useful enough to publish as it is, and then hopefully the application work won't affect the actual way that the score is calculated, but just like provide a process for generating the application requirements. And I mean, if we have to go back and make a new version, that's also okay. So with that, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. I got in queue as an individual, so found it, yeah, definitely very interesting with the graphs, and it certainly makes sense that you need, you know, high enough samples to get a good estimate there. I guess my question is, you know, when we have people trying to do these measurements and estimates in specific scenarios, how do they know when they have enough? Like, right, in your example, 1,000 seems a lot better than, you know, 10 or 100.
Yep.
Probably 1,000 is enough. How do we know it's not 10,000? Like,
It's a very good question. There is no correct answer, right? Because it depends on how accurate do you need the scores to be. What types of issues are you looking for? Because one of the things we found in the work is basically Wi-Fi. It's easier to estimate the correct score on Wi-Fi than it is for something like we also simulated or like random service outages that happen just rarely but have very high spikes. And those are very hard to catch, because if you see them, you see them, but if you don't see them, like you don't even know that they are there. So it's like it kind of depends on many things, but that's why we publish the work like this, because then the designers can know like kind of what they're looking for and also what precision they need, and then they can make those decisions.
right. So I guess then, is it possible to, and should we describe what it looks like when you have a converged set of information? So like, if your data looks like this, it's probably not enough samples. If it's starting to look more like this,
So
you're maybe closer. Obviously,
it's a very interesting idea. I'm not sure it's possible to do that, but I think, yeah, we should discuss that and see if we can find a way, because that would be a very good thing to add for sure.
if it's possible.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Tal Mizrahi, Huawei. So nice work. I wonder if you plan to make some more detailed information available beyond the few slides that you've shown here.
Absolutely. So if you go to this GitHub link, there is a PDF report with all of the simulations and all of the results for the different scenarios that we tested, and then all of the code as well for generating it is there. so that is what we've published so far, and certainly if we do work with the application side as well, that will also be made public because like it's part of the process here. So yeah.
Okay, and also I noticed that you still don't have security considerations in the draft, so it would be great to be able to review them before going to working group last call. And also kind of a question to the chairs, would it make sense for this draft to be experimental rather than informational?
Yeah. So in particular, because we will anticipate and await application feedback and might want to go back and do a revision of it. So it is okay. That is a fair point, but I think there's value in having this as informational as well, given the type of content. And
Yeah, I mean, generally, we have an AD or incoming AD here, so we can get that comment. But generally, when you have an experimental, it's good to describe in the document, right? What is the experiment being run? What are the conditions upon which we will gather more information, like to conclude the experiment, etc. So I think some of this is just describing an approach, and there I agree that there's like experimental or more data collection work to be done using it, but it feels like that could also be like a separate thing. So like worth considering, worth thinking about. But if we want to go down that road, the document would have to phrase itself as an experiment with like a specific goal and intent of what it is measuring, which I don't feel like that is the case currently.
For me, I'm happy to have that discussion. I don't really know what the best way to classify it would be, and also on the security stuff. Okay, can we discuss like how that's done? Because this is my first draft and I really don't know where to start with the security stuff. So very happy to have some feedback on that.
yeah, and that puts us. It's oh, we have some more. Do we have some more in the queue? Yep.
Yes, I did.
Yep.
Yep. I think I'm in the queue.
Hi,
David Guzman to Munich. I was just wondering if does it make sense for you to pick a single use case application, and if you are constrained to certain environments, topologies, so you can see clearly how the variance get reduced as long as you take more samples. What is your vision apart of the Wi-Fi case?
Well, we've chosen we have more than just the Wi-Fi case in the actual report, and actually, I'm presenting the same study in more detail at the MapRG session tomorrow, so there will be some more details there. But we've chosen a few different scenarios that are sort of have some differences in what the latency distributions and stuff look like, just to have some variability. But I mean, there's certainly room to find more scenarios and cases where there might be even a different type of behavior. So
Constrained to certain scales or any kind of, you're open to anything?
no, open to anything. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
I might chat to you around. Thank
Yeah,
you.
let's chat later. Yeah.
okay. Varokas?
Hi, Verokas here. Just very quick. So to Tommy's point about how do you know when the data point is enough? I think we can explore things like statistical tests, F test, T test, or those things. I'm not a statistician, but I think there's are things in that space that could help here. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that's a good point, but it's also there's the devil's in the detail there, because the network network latency distributions are not static. They change over time. So that makes it very difficult to like you can never know whether your next sample is from basically a different distribution because the circumstances have changed. So you can get to a certain point with those kinds of statistical tests, but most of them assume that you're looking at a distribution that is sort of not changing as you're looking at it, right? So yes, but also caveats.
And there might be some considerations around these topics that you could bring up in the draft. And I've seen some good comments here, and I think it would be great, as usual, that people in this room please engage with the draft, do careful review of the contents, especially things relating to security section. And there have been some ideas floating around here, so please do that. We will add this to the considerations list for working group last call. There are a number of documents now on that list, but I see that there is probably some more discussion to be had here. And with regards to reaching out to applications, I tend to agree that we probably don't need that to publish this document. But I think, as we will also see in the next presentation, you're not the only one with that problem here, and we do have a lack of that perspective in this group. So we should consider if we can do some more outreach to those application communities here as well.
Okay,
And
thank you very, very much.
that leads us to our next presentation by Stuart. Oh, I need to get back control. Sorry, just switching the control here. So, and then there.
Okay,
Now we have control.
very quick, and I mean quick, update since we last met in Dublin. The short status is there is no update. But I should share a bit more information about why. Bob McMahon, well-known author of IPERF 2, was trying to add similar working latency measurements to IPERF as we have in the Apple RPM test, and ran into something completely unexpected, which is that the TCP not sent low watermark option that we use on macOS and iOS to minimize self-induced queuing delay on the sending device exists on Linux, but doesn't do the same thing. And this led to a few heated emails back and forth until we sorted out the confusion that was going on. As a result of that, I've been down a little bit of a rabbit hole for the last few months with emails with the Linux kernel maintainers. We had a side meeting in Dublin. It was Thursday evening at dinner time, and I really thought nobody would show up, and we had about 30 people in the room. So there was a lot more interest in this than I thought there would be. As a result of that, we now have work on this broad problem of source buffer management, because you can't measure application layer round trip delays on Linux or any platform if you don't have any visibility into how much self-induced delay you have before the packets even leave the device that's sending them. And I guess the implications of that go beyond just measurement, that not only can you not measure the latency reliably, you can't achieve low latency on Linux if you don't have a way to control the on-device buffering. I guess for 20 years, a lot of people working networking have assumed that you can have high throughput or you can have low latency, but you have to pick one. You can't have both. And that assumption has ended up being baked into our APIs that makes the prediction true, that you actually can't have low latency and high throughput on Linux. So, or at least that's my understanding. That's why we have a draft. Maybe there are ways to do it, and that's why we have this community to help find the answers. So there is a new draft that is submitted for source buffer management. It is not clear yet whether this belongs in an IETF working group. So for now, we have a non-working group mailing list to discuss this. We will regroup in Madrid, and if there's interest from one of the working groups to say this is in scope, we're very happy to do that. I've heard people say the IETF doesn't design APIs, the IETF only designs protocols, in which case we'll keep this as an independent thing. I'm happy to go with whichever way the community thinks is best. So that has been a little bit of a few months detour. The question I asked, the other reason this has been delayed is I asked a question last time in Dublin and got no responses, unfortunately. We want to know that the working responsiveness metric, what we call the RPM, round trips per minute draft, is a useful predictor of real world behavior. So if you get a good score, does that mean you're going to have a good video conference or a good video game experience, or just generally web browsing is snappy and responsive? Is there a good correlation? I'm going to repeat my call for input there and give those vendors a time window to respond. I really think it would be good if they did, because this test, if this test becomes a benchmark, the way everybody looks at megabits now, you sign up for internet service and the question is, how many megabits is it? How many gigabits is it? Is it a gigabit? Is it 2 gigabits? Is it 10 gigabits? It's all about gigabits. If we manage to get a similar focus on working responsiveness, that will motivate vendors, and we're already seeing this. Comcast cable network has made huge improvements in the working responsiveness in the last 12 months. We're going to start seeing equipment vendors and operators pay attention to this. And for any company that's making a video conferencing product, you want that test to accurately reflect how your application works, because that way people will be tuning their hardware in ways that make your video conference work better. So this is an opportunity. We will try again to reach out to those communities, and this is what I propose, that we will give a few weeks for them to reply. We will update the draft before 05 expires on the 24th of April. If vendors don't respond before that, then they have IETF last call as their last chance to speak up. And my goal is to get this all wrapped up by IETF 123 in Madrid. Does that sound like a good plan? Any comments?
Any comments from the floor or from the remote participants? It looks like a very good way forward. And I think, yeah, both you and the previous presentation, you have a common problem here, that there is a space of people we want to get feedback from, and they are largely not in this room and not in this session. So, I mean, maybe we can discuss offline how we best reach out to these communities. And I think that would be common for both of your drafts here, because we probably want to progress them in similar timeframes as well. So, and we have Björn in the queue. Maybe want to add to this.
Yeah, Bjorn from Domus. I think these are good default values. So if there's no other input, like probably this is good as far as I can tell. And then I also want to express my support for the source buffer management work. I think that is, I hope the IETF can find a place for that, because that's a big part of improving and fixing this problem. So yeah.
Thank you. I will say there's been a lot of enthusiasm on an individual level. And the question in my mind is, we need a venue where people to get together, because on-device buffering affects transport protocols, TCP, QUIC, SCTP. It cuts across all platforms, Mac, Linux, FreeBSD, Windows, Android. The IETF is a good venue where there are representatives of all of those communities getting together. The IETF has done TAPS, which is sort of API layer work. So this would be the first time that IETF has got involved at the API layer. But right now I'm trying to focus on the merits of the work and stay out of the politics of whether this fits here or not.
Yeah, I only have a suggestion, because in benchmarking working group, we are handling a similar problem about the lack of input of expertise from specific technologies. So maybe the next time for Bjorn and you Stuart can consider to present in other working groups more related to media and video conference.
I would be happy to, and I'm sorry, did we miss that for this week already? The benchmarking?
No, I mentioned now because in benchmarking we had a similar problem, but for a
Okay.
different draft. Because, for example, we are working on benchmarking on segment routing.
Which group? When is that meeting?
I don't know. For example, media operations, or there are several working groups.
I'm definitely open to suggestions, and I've confessed I've done a bit of a shotgun approach because I approached TCPM, I approached Quick, I approached
okay, you already do.
TSVWG. I gave a 4-minute presentation at Hot RFC on Sunday. I have really been trying to get the word out on this.
You already did. Sorry.
BMWG was Monday. And you're saying media.
No, not BMWG. I mean, media operations.
MOPS or similar. Yeah.
Similar.
MOPS is happening now, which is actually one of these unfortunate things.
Yeah.
Conflicts between the groups of the people who actually have the operations experience.
That's inevitable. I think if there's one IETF group that conflicts with everything, it's metrics because.
Very true. Very true.
Justin Herman. So two things. I think it's in scope because it's not the first time the IETF already specified an API. It was the case for Netlink in Linux, for instance. So definitely a good thing. Did you consider the NetDev conference as a venue? It's basically Linux kernel related for anything.
I did not, but that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
I think it would be a good way to meet people.
I'll look that up. I don't.
We were there last week. It was last week.
Oh,
so
I missed it last week, but there'll be another one, right?
Next one, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Lots of good input here. And it's Giuseppe. It's not working. There you go. No. There are many clicks to get here. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, that's an update about the alternate marking deployment draft. So I'm presenting on behalf of the co-author. Just a summary, this draft aims to provide the guideline and deployment guidance for the alternate marking that is already standard RFCs. The scope is to clarify several aspects about the applicability to a controller domain, the rule of the different nodes involved, the type of measurements that can be enabled, one flag or two flag according on the accuracy, precision, the configuration and manageability aspects with regard to the Young model, PSAP, BGP for configuration or data exports or IPFix, Young push and related evolution like Young push light and so on. The available encapsulations, IPv6, SRv6, and MPLS, and so on. Also other that are still not standard. The change in the latest version, so we address basically the comments from Greg that we received in Dublin about the new section for hybrid two-step as an additional option for collecting alternate marking data. So we had the new section and the reference. We also revised the draft with minor changes and update the references. Yeah, we believe that the draft is quite stable and we join the long list of working group plus call queue. So please continue to comment and provide inputs and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we can start by checking if we have any comments or questions on this document right now. We do. Boris.
Yeah, Boris Hasanov, MWS. I just want to express like full support of this important work. Yeah, it's really useful case, and especially for our current network, I would say.
Thank you, Boris.
That is good feedback. As usual, it's great that we progress documents. We need to get, and it's great that we do get comments and we do get some reviews. That's perfect. So again, we're urging the group here to take time, read the document, provide your input. We will take your request for working group last call into consideration. We have a list of documents, and we will have to decide on some priority order here, probably based on where we have seen kind of most stability and most feedback being addressed. And so, yeah, to everyone in the group, please, please engage with each other's documents and help us move them forward. And yeah, you can stay on because you're next as well.
Yeah.
So let's see. I think I have to get back control first, and then stop slides, share slides, confirm, and then give you back control. Yes. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, you have to give back the control.
I had to take back control.
Suggestion for me to go.
Yeah, it's like
next improvement.
it's like number of clicks here in between.
To reduce the number. Yeah. This is the document that you mentioned that has been recently adopted by the working group. That is the Young data model of the alternate marking method. Is of course mentioned in the previous draft about the configuration aspects. We are covering here only the Young part. This draft define the Young model, so the about the tree structure and related information for the configuration. The important things is we follow the same structure of the IOM Young data model in order to have coherent applications, also to facilitate the implementation. So basically, if you look at the first part, is exactly the same as IOM Young model. Of course, only the remaining part, the alternate marking profile, is different, of course, because you have to define the elements specific for the alternate marking, like the flow identification, the loss flag, the delay flag, and so on. What are the next steps? The draft is quite stable. We received positive feedback during the adoption. Some inputs will be addressed in another document that I will present later, that is on Young telemetry part for Young notifications about both the IOM and alternate marking, because the elements that were suggested apply more to this document than on the configuration. So comments are always welcome, of course. So thank you.
Any comments right now? If not, thanks a lot, Giuseppe, and we'll see you in a bit again up here. Next up, we have Greg White.
Good morning. So this is a talk about proposed extension for STAMP to enable bidirectional measurement of ECN traversal primarily, but also DSEP as well. The draft was published, draft 00 was published. There's been one update that's available in the GitHub repo. I have not done a draft 01 yet, but next slide.
Oh, or do you want to click here?
Okay. So the goal of this is to, like I said, enable bidirectional measurements of ECN traversal using the STAMP protocol. These sorts of measurements have become sort of popular recently with the publication of L4S, RFC 9330, 9331. And there isn't a way using the STAMP protocol to perform these measurements reliably. So the kind of primary things that people are interested in measuring are detecting if there's bleaching on the path, either the forward path or reverse path, detect if there's actually the presence of a congestion marker along the path. So can you see congestion marking in either direction? And then be able to actually perform measurements of the benefits that might be gotten by using L4S ECN marking. There's an existing class of service TLV, certainly for stamp, that enables bidirectional measurement using DSCP values, but unfortunately does not allow reliable measurement of bidirectional ECN marking. So here's the existing class of service TOV, gives you two DSCP value locations, an ECN field, and then this reverse path field. And DSCP1 is the session sender's instruction to the reflector of please use this DSCP value on your return packet. And then the DSCP2 and ECN values are way for the session reflector to report what it saw on its inbound inbound packet. And the reverse path is a flag that allows the session reflector to indicate whether it actually used the DSCP1 value or not. There's some rules around that in the class of service. So problem with this is a couple problems. First off, by my read, neither the stamp RFC nor the stamp extensions RFC actually talk about what the session reflector should put in its ECN field on the reflected packets. It's not defined. There is one statement that sort of implies that the session reflector does copy the ECN value from the received packet into its reflected packet, but it's not directly stated. Assuming that a reflector actually does even copy that, the received ECN value, you still don't have valid measurements in a lot of cases. If there is forward path bleaching, then you can't obviously do any measurement of reverse path. And if there's congestion indication on the forward path, you also can't detect whether there's congestion indication on the reverse path. So simple fix, let's just add the entire TOS byte or entire DSCP plus ECN field, 2 copies of that in the TLV, or to find a new TLV that has these 2 copies. The DSCP1 and EC1 are the instruction from the session sender to the session reflector. Please use these values on your reflected packet. DSCP2 and EC2 are a spot for the reflector to say, here's what I received in the packets you sent me. And the reverse path is defined in the same way. A little bit of extra text to help make that more understandable in the bullet list, but otherwise identical. So there was one open question on the mailing list. So what happens if a session sender decides to put both of these TLVs, the class of service and the DSCP ECN, into a stamp message? What happens? What should we define for that? A couple of options were discussed. One is we could say that's invalid, just don't do it, in which case I would say we'd leave the session reflector behavior undefined there. That's the simplest in terms of session reflector behavior, kind of, I guess, lets the session reflector do whatever it might want to do. Second option is to allow both of them to be present and define that the DSCP ECN TLV takes precedence if they're both included. And that gives a nice capability where if there's a session reflector out there that doesn't understand the new TLV, it will ignore an unknown TLV and it will use the class of service values. Whereas a newer one can ignore per the proposal, ignore the class of service and use the DSCP ECN. And what this allows is for a session reflector to not have to know, sorry, for a session sender to not have to know in advance whether the session reflector it's talking to supports the new TLV or not. And then it can deal with the responses that it gets appropriately. So it does make things a little bit more complicated on the session reflector in order to handle both TLVs, probably handle them in either order as well. Although that could be defined, I guess, if you want to make it simpler for the session reflector, define that if they're both present, they must be in a certain order. That could be done. Implementation status. So there are now 2 interoperable implementations. One by Will Hawkins, a link to his GitHub repo there. And then another one by Cable Labs. This one we've not made public yet, but we've been working with Will to do the interoperability testing and fixing issues that arose from that. So There is actually a third, I was made aware of a third implementer who was planning on implementing this. I've not gotten a status update as to whether they've made progress on that. In terms of registration of the sub-TOV, the draft is proposing type 179, which is in the first come, first served range for stamp extensions. And both of the current implementations do use that value. There is another range of type values that is labeled the IETF review range. So if this is adopted by the IETF, presumably we could move it into that range. Thanks to people who reviewed the draft and provided comments on the mailing list, Bjorn and Greg and Will. Greatly appreciated for those comments. And then questions for the working group. Is this interesting for IPPM, and would you consider adopting it? So we have a queue.
And Greg is first here.
They were going to say something.
No. Stand by. Hi, Greg Mirsky Erickson. So as I mentioned, so this is work that's been brought to IPPM working groups about 8 years, well, probably 7 years ago, as part of TWAMP extension. So with the support of TWAMP control and TWAMP test and possibility of using it in TWAMP Lite. So looking at notes, what seems to be is that the transport area is concerned with the test protocol setting ECN value to anything but 0. So I think that that's what we need to do first. We need to convince transport area that that something doesn't break RFC 3168 because there might be, again, if it's not clearly explicitly stated in a document that all stamp packets are set to ECN value 0, then it's our mission. But their instruction from transport is that it must set to 0, nothing else. So everything else should be marked inside. And that's my concern with this proposal.
Okay, that's an interesting comment. Yeah, I think that we should ensure that transport area is aware of this and has an opportunity to comment on it. I think at this point, these traversal measurements are becoming pretty common and are used by applications, not using STAMP, but using their own proprietary mechanisms or WebRTC. Now those implementations are doing a lot of this. So I think, yeah, I think if it was a concern 8 years ago, we should revisit that.
Yes, I agree with you. Some people can do some interesting, let's call it this way, things, but that doesn't mean that these things become standard. So, but if we standardize something that, or before we start going to this direction, we need to reconcile with this existing requirements, because it's not a recommendation. It's a clear requirement that router must not set the ECN value to anything but 0. So basically, ECN values are not set to be set by router.
But a stamp session reflector is not a router. I mean, it could be a functionality that exists on a router, but it's not a router functionality, right? It's not a forwarding functionality.
Again, yes, we can probably give this justification, but first we need to get, I think that before, or as a part of this discussion, get involved. Transport might be David Black as one of the, because he's been advisor to routing area in many groups.
So Yeah, exactly. So one suggestion we could have is to reach out to TSVWG. For instance, if we do an adoption call here, we can make sure that this one is sent out to TSVWG as well, so we can get that feedback at the point of doing an adoption call, for instance.
I guess to clarify, Greg, from your perspective, if we do talk to TSVWG, and if they're okay with stuff, do you think we should do this, or no? What are your opinions, kind of separately from that concern about this work?
Sorry, sorry to cut. Yes, I think that if they agree with this particular thing, and probably we can work on wording this question, but I would put an emphasis on this particular mechanism that allows to set ECN to arbitrary non-zero value.
Right.
So if they agree with this mechanism, and we can explain the rationale for it, because yes, it's useful, but if they don't see that it contradicts existing and doesn't violates existing RFCs, so then if it does, then okay, we can say, okay, does that mean that probably these RFCs need to be updated? Because then the internet changes and applications need to be more flexible to make some exclusion. So, but at least start open this discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. I know there's a TSP working group session on Thursday. I'll see if there's room on the agenda to do this week.
Wednesday,
okay,
yeah.
I think tomorrow.
We can talk to them and see if yeah.
Tal Mizrahi, a question. Let's say I'm a session sender and I want to use this TLV. Does it mean that I have to set the DSCP and the ECN on the reflecting packet? Or is it possible only to get the reflected DSCP and DCN from the session reflector without setting the DSCP value and DCN value?
See if I followed that. So on the in the TOV, you include the on the screen the DSCP1 and EC1 values that you want the session reflector to use. The rules around DSCP in the draft align with ways defined in the class of service TOV. So there could be local policy that says, some DSCPs are not allowed, or an implementation that doesn't support certain DSCPs. And that's the function of the reverse path flag to see, did the session reflector actually use the values that it was asked to use? Value, I should say. The ECN field value, it's defined that you always use the session reflector always uses the EC1 value on its response. I'm not sure I answered your question, Mick, because I didn't.
Is it possible to completely disable DSCP1 and DCAC1, or both of them?
So to only include one or the other. So you're meaning just send me back what you received,
right?
But
because maybe I want to get the information, but I don't want to determine which DSCP and which ECN value is used by the reflector. Or maybe I only want to set one of them and not the other.
Well, the values in the header of the return packet have to include something. It could be zeros.
But it doesn't have to be determined by the session sender. It might be depending on the policy of the session reflector.
There's no way defined to do that, unfortunately.
Okay, so might be something to consider.
Okay, yeah.
Rakesh?
So the DSCP1, it's reflected by the session reflector. There is, we just presented a draft where an entire IP header is reflected by the reflector, which would include the DSCP and all other fields as well. Have you looked at that?
I had not looked at that, but that sounds like it would solve the problem or the question that was just previously asked. If you're only interested in looking at the forward path, how the DSCP and ECN values were received, sounds like what you're referring to would be a solution for that. That wouldn't obviously have the ability to specify the session reflector use the particular values. Right?
Yeah, so we have, there is another RFC 9503 that has a return path parameters, which session sender tells the reflector to use this parameter on the reflected packet, including a return path, for example, or IP address or incoming link and stuff like that. So this could be a TLV to say use these parameters like DSCP and ECN on top of it. But that's something also you can have. This is more of an encoding thing.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Footer with Nokia. Just if you're looking for guidance on the conflicts, we've already run into some of this with the asymmetrical packets in 9503. So section, and I can send this out to the list, but section 3.3 kind of puts the onus on the session sender not to do things that are incompatible that the session reflector would have to deal with.
Okay.
Okay, so
All right.
some guidance in that.
Great, thank you.
Greg, you're in the queue.
Just to probably answer Tal's question. So in a published class of service TOV, it's possible, but in a little bit like a hack. So if DSCP1 is a value that is not supported in a domain, then the reflector is must use received value on the return packet. So basically make DSCP1 invalid, and that will probably achieve the mechanism that Tal is asking.
Okay.
Yeah, Björn from Domus. I think this is useful work, and so I would like to express support.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's right.
Lots of good feedback, lots of input. We'll definitely make sure to coordinate this with the transport area or transport working group, TSVWG. Next up is Justin.
Hi again. So this draft basically does not update RFC 9617. It's just, that it reuses the Yang model that is defined in that RFC, and we augment it to provide the features introduced by the integrity protection. So this is how it looks. And Greg, you can see I didn't lie. DEX is not supported, right? So basically what we do here is that we provide, the method ID that is used, to provide integrity protection. And this field is only present if the role of the node is encapsulating node. So basically it was defined in the RFC. And that's all for this Yang model. This is pretty straightforward. And yeah, by the way, I didn't need 10 minutes for that, but anyway. And maybe it would make sense to ask for working group adoption to make it progress at the same time as the one for IOM integrity.
That sounds like a very reasonable request, and this looks like a straightforward document that we could progress through the working group quickly. So yeah, we'll definitely consider that. Yep.
Right. Thank you.
Alex.
Alex Incelion, I see that you have also added the features on whether the integrity protection is supported. I would suggest to add an if feature statement on the leaves that you are adding on the augmentations. So on the method type, add a if feature
It's not in this figure, but it's defined.
Okay,
So if
okay,
this is an encapsulating node, it's defined. Otherwise, it's not defined, because it's only the encap node that is responsible for that, and you just want to provide that to the encap node.
So no, it's the feature defines if the integrity protection is supported. I'm referring to another thing.
But I'm not sure why it would be needed, because if one module like this is used, it's definitely that you're using the integrity protection on top of IOM. Because those are, if you look at the names, there is an int prefix added to those, which is basically the equivalent as the ones defined in the RFC 9617, but with integrity protection.
Okay, I have to double check.
So let's discuss that after. Yeah.
Thanks. Any more comments? Seems not. Then thank you for a good and brief presentation. Next up is Giuseppe.
Okay. Yeah. Just to give you context for this draft, I work on this draft together with another co-author, Xiaomin, that is not listed. I miss this. But this draft came from the draft presented before by Rakesh. So, and is about how to perform hop by hop and end-to-end active measurement. So, considering that the draft from Rakesh aims to define the stamp extension to address this use case, I think that it's important to generalize this concept for all the kind of active tools combined with hybrid methodologies. So, because in several scenarios may be useful to perform hop by hop measurement together with end-to-end active measurements. The draft is informational, it's quite simple. So the active test packets can be used in combination with hybrid methods, so to perform on-path active measurement. So two use cases are possible. Of course, the use of ICMP, ICMP v6, LSP ping, if we are considering MPLS, or OWAMP, TWAMP, and STAMP, in combination with the IPv6 hop by hop option or the MNA substack. Looking at the IPv6 example, for now, the draft covers both IPv6 and MPLS use case. Looking at the IPv6 example, the IPv6 hop by options, for alternate marking, we have the RFC 9343 that is standard, and for IOM we have the RFC 9486 that is standards as well. We can augment the active methods by enabling on-path measurements. So it's important to say that we are not adding any new functionalities to ICMP, OWAMP, TWAMP, STAMP, so everything is leveraging the existing mechanisms. And we are just coupling the hop by hop hybrid methods together with the active tools. The same feature can apply to MPLS data plane with the MNA substacks. It's basically the same. The changes in the latest version, so we received some comments in Dublin and before, and these comments have been addressed in the new revision. Basically, we added the MPLS eco request reply, the case of MPLS LSP ping that I already mentioned, and also minor changes and references. Yeah, considering that the work from Rakesh is already adopted and is moving forward, we also asked the group to consider this for a possible adoption. That's all.
And we have Rakesh.
We cannot hear you, Rakesh.
Hi, so I'm Rakesh. So I have one question or comment that I had on the reflecting the extension header draft. Here is also the IPv6 data plane and MPLS data plane. So the question I ask that if it should split it, so that comment may apply to your draft as well, something that to think about.
Yes, yes, of course. Of course, this also apply to this document, of course. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Tal Mizrahi. So nice work. And one thing to point out is that since the draft mentions ICMP with IPv6 options, it should be noted that there is a draft in 6-man which defines ICMP reflection, which allows you to receive the IPv6 options sent to the remote side when you get the ICMP reply. So that can actually be useful with respect to the active measurement you're describing.
Yeah. I don't remember if I already include the reference to that draft, but if not, I will check. Maybe Xiaomi, do you?
Already there.
It's already included. Okay.
The
So
new
we
version?
already included. Yeah.
Great.
To ICMP6 reflection draft.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
great.
already
Yeah.
included it. Okay.
Thanks.
Because Shao also joined as co-author and he had this comment as well. So we included it.
Thank you. If no more comments, we will also take this into consideration of our list of potential adoption calls. Thank you. And yeah, we'll give you to your next presentation. There we are. There, and there, and there.
Okay. This draft covers the on-path telemetry Young data model. So basically, it's quite connected to the alternate marking Young model, but it covers both the telemetry for alternate marking and IOM data. So yeah, the module is a little bit, just a little bit more complex that because it includes both the alternate marking telemetry data and IOM telemetry data. Of course, the application scenarios is the Young subscription model and its evolution like Young push light and so on. So network telemetry updates can be subscribed to have on change or periodic notification for real-time performance. This draft also has a companion draft in OPSAVG that already progressed about the IPFix export. So this is the alternative approach to use Young push for telemetry. So please review this draft. I think it's quite relevant, especially for who are follow the telemetry topic. Please also review the model to see if something is missing or not. Please.
Yes. So you mentioned that this covers IAM.
Yeah.
How it's related to RFC 9617, IAM Yang model.
Yeah, this is because this cover only the telemetry part. So because in 96, 97 only cover the configuration data, not the telemetry data. Yeah, if you look at the parameter of the RFC 96, 97, you only have the possibility to the data elements to configure.
Right, but then if we talk about data, in my understanding, data is orthogonal to the method. It's okay. It's not me. Data is orthogonal to the method it's been collected. It doesn't matter whether it's alternate marking methods, an IAM, it's a pigeons and anything. It's a data. So I would probably encourage you to look at data abstracts, not how this data being obtained.
Yes, but you need to define in the Young model. So I agree, and I see your point, but in some way we need to or augment the Young data model for OIM or define a new Young
Yes,
model.
I think that the former.
There are two options in the end. So
yes, probably just.
That's why I consider to write a new Young model only for on-path telemetry and combine IOM and alternate marking to cover the.
Because if you look, for example, at STEM Young model, so it has a portion of performance data exported. So it includes percentiles and everything. But it might be easily extracted into the abstract performance monitoring data model that will be applicable to anything.
Yeah, let's further discuss what is the best approach. For now, I think that considering that we have two separate Young model for alternate marking and IOM covering the configuration aspects, I propose this Young model to combine only for telemetry, but other approaches are also possible. So I'm open to cover. So this draft, for example, may also propose two augmentation to the other two Young models, or other approaches are possible, of course. Let's further discuss on this.
Maybe as a contributor, there is even a third option that even you describe a new Young model, maybe new groupings, and actually augment the existing Young models.
Yeah.
So that would be possible as well.
Yeah, this is also possible. This is also a third option that is also possible. So yeah, let's figure out what can be the best. So maybe feedback can help to choose the right way. Yeah. Please.
Yeah, Björn from Domus. This is interesting, and there's a question if you're aware of the work that's being done in the Broadband Forum on quality attenuation, because there's data models there as well for similar like latency measurements on the path.
Okay.
It might be like a different use case. I'm not sure if it's like the overlap is really there, but it would be interesting to discuss about that. So if
yeah. For sure, this is for telemetry for this specific method. So IOM and alternate marking. I don't think Broadband Forum is covering this, but
no,
maybe,
I don't think so either.
Yeah, but maybe we can further check if we can cooperate.
Because I've been involved in the work in the Broadband Forum, but I have not looked thoroughly enough on this stuff to sort of see the link until now. But there might be something there. So yeah, just wanted to mention it.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have this slide to summarize the changes we had in the latest version. So first of all, we addressed the input from Xiaoming, that this input came during the adoption call of the previous draft, the alternate marking Young model draft. He suggested to add the sequence number under the delay measurement to handle the case of multiple double market packets in the same period. Of course, this can happen in the implementation, and we will address this in the next revisions. The period number is already included, so we don't need to add. We also received a review from Thomas, so thank you. You mentioned that Young model is already in a good shape considering the current option, but if we want to follow a different approach, we can. Editorial changes that Thomas also suggested will be addressed in the next revision. That's all. So comments are welcome, and thank you.
Yeah, Maxim?
Hi, Maxime Goffard from University of Liège. Could you go back one slide, please?
This?
No, once more. Okay, perfect. When I look at, sorry, ERM direct export, you are exporting the same from direct exports, incremental, and pre-allocated trace option. That's right?
Yeah.
I think, because I'm working on an implementation of direct exporting in the Linux kernel, I think there might be an interest for direct export to also export the extension flags, which comes with the optional flow ID and sequence number. So it might be interesting to have a distinction between incremental, preallocated, and direct export there.
Yeah.
Just an idea.
No. I think it's a good suggestion. We also are discussing with Justin, the IP fix to make it not raw export, but more detailed, and this can apply also to this. That is, if we define a more detailed IP fix export, we can apply the same concept, the same field also to this draft. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some good feedback and input for you. And yet another document to add to our list of considerations. I think there are some discussions here that you might want to resolve first. So
before the adoption, probably in this
yeah.
case, we need some more discussion to fix the best approach.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, thank you very much. And that leads us into the next part of our agenda, which is the lightning talks. And we will start off. And we actually have 20 minutes for 3 lightning talks. So that's that's unusually good. So next up should be aggregation trace option with Alexander. So here we go.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear. Do you want me to drive the slides?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yep.
This will make it easier. Thank you. Yeah. So hello, everybody. So I'm Alex. I'm presenting on the proposal for a new trace option, aggregation trace option for IOEM. The current draft is in revision 02. We've been kicking this around for a while, actually, but now we have actually 2 new authors joining us going forward, and also a proof of concept with an application on network sustainability that have been implemented. And hopefully, so we're hoping this will help us invigorate the discussion. It's been kind of like we haven't really had discussion on the mailing list yet, but we'll see where this goes. So what this is about is, it's a new option that allows to aggregate data during traversal. So instead of just collecting individual data items, you're basically specifying a very simple aggregation function such as min, max, sum, and so forth, and basically aggregate a particular data item as the packet traverses the network. There are a number of possible uses for this. For instance, you can use it to identify a bottleneck or outlier. You can aggregate packet dwell times for service level guarantees, or actually the use case that we have is this assessing path carbon metrics. Next slide, please. So this is basically just the basic idea how this works. So this is, of course, the basic IOM picture. But basically, assuming that you have a parameter that you're wanting to aggregate, this parameter A in the light blue on top, basically, as the packet traverses it, you're not appending each time basically the new parameter, but you're basically computing what the then current maximum or current sum or whatever the current aggregate is. And this way, basically, you have, first of all, basically very fixed packet overhead, obviously, and you don't need to do any processing outside the network to act on it. So basically enable this for greater network intelligence inside. Next one, please. And yeah, this is just what the data structure looks like. For the details, please refer to the draft. But it's fairly straightforward. So basically, you include basically the data parameter that you want to aggregate, as well as the aggregation function as part of the packet. You basically carry the aggregate, and you also carry a node ID for instance, for where a maximum or a minimum was identified, and have as well some auxiliary information. So yeah, there was a lightning talk, so I kept it short. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a few people in the queue here. So.
Hi, Tal Mizrahi. So it seems that in the IOM trace options, most of the possible data types are not something that you'll be able to aggregate, like the node ID, hop limit, timestamp. So it boils down to maybe one type of data field, right? What?
Yeah, so basically the aggregation is for one data field. This is basically one of the items that are probably also require more discussion. We would like to ideally define more than just the basic IOM data types, but other operational data. For instance, in our use case, this concerned certain power metrics that would be aggregated as part of this. If you wanted to aggregate more data parameters, you could always basically include several. You could include several of those data structures in the same packet. But to keep it simple, we wanted to keep it simple and fixed and so forth. This is basically why we are just doing one data packet. One fixed, one data parameter, I should say.
Yeah, so you may want to take a look at an existing draft called the transit measurement option, which does something kind of similar. And
Okay.
We may talk about it offline to see if there are any common grounds there.
All right, thank you for the pointer. So where's the transit measurement option? Where is this being discussed?
It's an individual submission in IPPM, actually.
Okay, sorry, I need to look at it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Justin Newman. Just to make sure I got things right, if I were to use this option, how would I know if this is a specific node on the path that this was possible for an issue? I mean, you got your counters increasing, but if this is a specific node on the path, you don't know, right?
Yeah. So you're referring to the data field there at the bottom. Well, so basically the use of this depends on the aggregate. So if you have a comparison function, comparison aggregator, like a min or max, then you would basically include the node ID of the last node that was updating this as part of the field. For some, for instance, on average, you would basically just ignore this. You would just basically that would be irrelevant. If you were to encounter some kind of error along the path, then you can basically use the node ID to indicate where the error occurred. So then you can use it as a help for troubleshooting.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Xiaomi ZTE. Generally, I have two comments. First one, I think it's time to extend the IOM trace option because we have some new application scenario for IOM. So I think, and I also see some interest in this working group. As just Tel said, he has a draft about IOM trace extension. And I also submitted a draft last October for IOM trace extension. Second comment, I think we have a alternative way to extend IOM trace option. As I understand, your draft introduced a new IOM option type, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but in my draft, I think currently we already have a few IOM options. So I don't want to introduce more IOM options. So I extended the existing IOM trace option. So we can discuss further.
Okay,
maybe.
I think that's part of the discussion. I think there's a trade-off whether to extend it or whether even to make it a separate thing. These are definitely the things that need to be a discussion. I agree. So great. So we have something to to carry on, perhaps also on the mailing list.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for all of that feedback. It sounds like this is a problem that people are wanting to solve, and there might be different solutions there. So please take these discussions to the mailing list and see if you can come up with a joint way forward in this. That would be great, and that would help us in evaluating what we can move forward for adoption later on. So Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Next up, we have Luis Contreras. Yeah, there you go.
Hello, everyone. This is Luis from Telefonica. I will present this draft, which is in fact being part of the PC working group. The idea here would be to socialize this approach, and I follow the suggestion from Greg on this. So thanks, Greg, for that. So next slide.
You have the clicker.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. So the basic idea on this is to I will come back to use the precision availability metrics that were produced by IPPM working group at the time of calculating or selecting the paths by the PCE. So what is the rationale here? So basically, some of communication services require service level objectives being expressed as precision metrics. That could be the case of network slices. IETF network slices being defined in this working group. On the other hand, we have the IPPM that has produced these precision availability metrics. So the objective would be to enable the PCE to do the calculations or the selections of the paths based on these precision metrics. So yeah, essentially the metric that could be used at the time of selecting the path could be based on that. The draft has been already presented in PCE several times, four times, also yesterday in this ITF. So the applicability on this, one idea would be to the provision of services according to the desired behavior along the time. So PCE as today basically takes into account the metric, but the instantaneous metric, let's say. So leveraging on precision metrics, we can select or create the path according to the history of the behavior of the path according to the metric. The clear case would be latency, so somehow we could have an idea of the stability of the latency along the time. And also another usage could be triggering corrective actions. So here there could be a link with all the work on a network incident. So as long as we detect some anomaly, maybe we can trigger some calculation with the PC in order to select another path that would behave according to the expected long run behavior along the time, basically. So this is an idea of the different messages. What we are proposing is a new object in PCE called precision metric. PCE currently has a metric object with the ideas of delay, but that said will be instantaneous delay, for instance, right? Or bounded delay. Here, essentially, with the precision metric object, we could work with different tiers or basically a histogram or a statistical view of the latency in summary. So the next steps, we have requested comments recently to the IPPM working group. In fact, we received from Rudiger and Greg comments on that we will address for sure. Well, we have the opportunity to present it here, and also we presented in PCE. Our idea is to keep working on that and basically collect all the feedback that you could provide. Would be more than welcome and prepare a new version for Madrid. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Rakesh.
Rakesh from Cisco Systems. If you can go back to the slide number 3, I think you have 3 use cases. So last one means that a path is being monitored and there is some violation of PAM metrics which is reported, and then PC can take action to find a different path. That makes sense. But the second one, I was trying to understand, does it mean that PC has to store the PAM metrics for like a history of all the paths to be able to say that when it computes a path, it goes and looks at the history and say there was a PAM violation of that path? Is that?
But not necessarily the PCE to be the one in charge of that. So we could have a monitoring system in charge of that, and the PCE maybe just checking the status time to time. So it's not necessarily the PCE the one that needs to incorporate this functionality.
So it will have to consult with some entity to say, is this path good from PAM point of view? And if it's okay, then so somebody will have to store the history. Okay.
Yes. And could be the PCE the one asking for the data, or that component the one triggering actions in the PCE. So this is, let's say, no, it's somehow out of scope. But yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Björn from Dumus. First, like, thank you for bringing this to the IPPM. I don't know how I missed this document until now, but it looks very, very interesting. And as far as I can tell from my first reading, it's entirely compatible with the way that we do application requirements in quality of outcome. So that's yeah, certainly very interesting for me, and something I would like to discuss further with you if you
for sure. Thank
if
you.
you are here.
Thank you, Bjorn.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing this work and highlighting it here. And next up, we have Thomas to go on the floor.
Thanks a lot. So I was just squeezing this one in last minute in this session. I was yesterday participating the Ops AWG, and the chairs were presenting a status update on the OIM characterization. Unfortunately, the document is at the moment stuck. It cannot progress any further. You might have noticed Greg, as the shepherd, was reaching out quite a while ago to the IPPM working group to get some additional feedback and comments. Unless we don't get any updates, we won't be able to further move the document forward. And I wanted to reach out here at IPPM and want to understand whether this is something interesting. I believe as an author, it's good to have proper terminology. And I see that basically that this document is updating RFC 6291, and also it extends RFC 7799 with some terminology. So I wanted to get some feedback from IPPM, whether this is useful to you or whether you think this work should be further progressed or not. And I see Greg.
Greg Mirsky Erickson. Yes, actually, I appreciate Thomas bringing this to the attention of the group, because in my opinion, if this document progresses, IPPM working group will be one of the most effective bait. I might have a different view of how this document related to RFC 7799. In my understanding, this document will change the terminology that being characterization of performance monitoring methods that being established based on RFC 7799 to something which seems to me as artificial and controversial. So at current state, this document is in limbo, and might be the way out is, rather than fixing this document, would be a work where IPPM will collaborate with ops area and some groups in routing area that more familiar with their fault management methods, like LSP ping, BFD. So we'll bring our performance monitoring expertise on terminology, and then document and generalize terms that we are familiar with, because some terms we're using colloquially, and people outside of our community hearing us saying, "What are you talking about?" So just to make this more public knowledge, similar to their work that's being done on OEM acronyms, because there were a lot of confusion looking back at the time when people saying, well, are you saying O and M, or are you saying O, A, and M? Because these are different beasts. So I think that basically just combining efforts and finding some people who volunteer their time to do the work might be the good way forward and really commendable volunteering service, community service. Thank you.
Perfect. I think that's the perfect segue I was looking for. And okay, I see also Benoit as a chair is commenting. Yeah, please, sorry. Go ahead.
So I'm Benoit Claes. I'm the OpsWG chair. So this is a document which I adopted. And I've got also another hat because I was a document shepherd. So Greg, I like what you said now. As you mentioned, the draft's in limbo right now because the author kind of lost energy. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the author, but that's what I observe. Now, whenever you mention that we want to have people volunteering, do we have people here wanted to help actively on these documents? I think that's a question for the chairs as well, because as an OpsAD chair, I'm stuck as well with this document. So just telling the author should do this or that, right now, I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Benoit. Okay, just who will get interested, send this to IPPM list and I'll read the responses, because if there is a critical mass of people who will join the work, I'm in, but I would not carry it myself. Let's put it this way.
Okay, I think that's useful, and then that probably would be the first step here, is to take it to the IPPM mailing list and gauge the interest here from the group, and then from there we can decide on, you know, what we do with it as a working group here as well.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And we're on time. This was a very productive session, I think. So thanks a lot for good contributions, good presentations, and a lot of comments. And we have a lot of things to consider, lots of last calls and adoption calls to consider. And again, I want to say a big thank you to Tommy and wish you the best of luck on the other side of this table. Yes, we have a new AD. Welcome. And we're very much looking forward to keep working with you.
Thanks. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Right.